Good evening. I am Driti Atri, and tonight on Skyline, the world looks dangerously close to another major escalation. Ladies and gentlemen, American warplanes are gathering near Israel. Iran is threatening hidden missile attack. Russian fighter jets are nearly colliding with British spy aircraft. Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu are reportedly clashing behind the closed doors. China and Russia are quietly discussing the Iran crisis. And now, even the Gulf region is warning that Iran backed militia may be targeting critical infrastructure. Tonight's stories, they are not isolated headlines anymore. They are pieces of a much larger geopolitical storm. The whole West Asia is heating up again. NATO tensions are rising, superpowers are choosing sides. And behind every diplomatic statement, military preparations appear to be escalating. Tonight, we break down 9 explosive stories shaping the future of global conflict, power, and diplomacy. And we begin with a very dramatic new visual from Israel, where American military aircrafts are now raising fear of a much wider war. Ladies and gentlemen, fresh signs of a possible military buildup are now emerging in the whole West Asia, and the visuals are impossible to ignore. Ladies and gentlemen, reports suggest dozens of American aerial refueling aircraft, including KC-46 and KC-135 tankers, are now stationed near Israel's Ben Gurion airport that is close to Tel Aviv. Suddenly, speculation is exploding across global defense circles. Why are so many US military support aircrafts are gathering near Israel at the very same time? Because refueling aircraft, they are not ordinary warplanes, right? They are the planes that allow fighter jets and bombers to stay in the air longer during major military operation. Now, in advanced warfare, aerial tankers become essential when countries prepare for large-scale strike or long-distance combat missions. And now military analysts, they are asking whether Washington is quietly preparing logistical support for any possible future confrontation with Iran or not. We hear Mr. Donald Trump's latest warning. It has only increased the tension. Mr. Trump said that the whole situation with Tehran, it is right on the borderline, suggesting that the whole crisis could escalate rapidly if negotiations fail here. And that sentence alone, it has sent shockwaves through markets, diplomatic circles, and military observers worldwide. The fear is now that diplomacy may be running out of time. You know what makes this even more serious is another report claiming that these US aircraft could remain in Israel through at least the end of 2027. Now, if that is true, then this would transform Ben Gurion Airport into a major long-term American logistics hub in West Asia. And Iran is watching every move very, very carefully. You know, for Tehran, this build-up may look less like defense and more like preparation here. And yes, speaking of Iran, a chilling new warning from inside the Iranian military establishment is now causing a lot of concern inside America's defense circle. Well, Iran is now openly hinting that the world has not yet seen its most dangerous weapon. You know, that particular warning, it reportedly came from an Iranian military source speaking to Russian state media. According to the claims, Tehran possesses advanced domestically produced weapon systems that have never been used or seen in combat before. And the message here, that was direct. If America or Israel attacks again, Iran says it will respond without any restraint here. Can you think about how carefully these words are actually chosen? Without restraint, that's what he said. That is not an ordinary military language. That is psychological warfare. Iran is basically trying to create uncertainty, fear, and strategic hesitation inside Washington and Tel Aviv. Because let's be honest, in modern conflict, unpredictability itself, that becomes a weapon. The Iranian sources reportedly claim that the country faces no shortage in missiles, drones, or even defense capabilities. Tehran also hinted that hidden or undisclosed system could appear in future clashes. Whether every claim is though fully accurate or not, you just understand the psychology behind that. American military planners, they already know that Iran has heavily invested in asymmetric warfare, and that too for years. Now, instead of matching American warplane for plane or ship for ship, Iran focused on missiles, drones, underground facilities and proxy networks spread across the region. And this strategy, it allows Tehran to threaten stronger militaries indirectly while avoiding any conventional weakness here. And you know what? This is exactly why the US military bases across the whole West Asia remains nervous. Thousands of American troops are stationed in Iraq, Syria, Bahrain, Qatar, and nearby region, all potentially within range of Iranian missile systems or allied militia. You know, the fear that is no longer just about one direct strike. It is about escalation spreading rapidly through major front, and that too all at once. And while tensions rise in West Asia, another very dangerous military confrontation is now unfolding much closer to Europe. Here, we are talking about Russia. A British spy aircraft that was flying over international waters near the Black Sea suddenly found itself facing something extremely dangerous. Here enters Russia. Yes, Russian fighter jets. And according to Britain's Ministry of Defense, the encounters became so aggressive that one Russian aircraft reportedly flew very close, rather close enough to trigger the British plane's emergency system. In fact, at one point, a Russian Su-35 came so close that RAF aircraft's autopilot reportedly disengaged automatically. Can you imagine the tension inside that cockpit here? An unarmed surveillance plane, Russian fighter jets flying aggressively nearby, high speed passes only meters away. One mistake, one miscalculation, and the entire situation could have exploded into an international crisis. Here, the UK says another Russian Su-27 conducted 6 rapid passes directly in front of the British aircraft, buzzing dangerously close to its nose. Well, London has now officially condemned the behavior as reckless and unacceptable. And you know, this matters because these encounters, they are becoming increasingly frequent. The Black Sea region, it has turned into one of the world's most dangerous aerial flashpoints since the Russian-Ukraine war began. In fact, NATO aircraft regularly patrol that area. Russian jets regularly intercept them, and every encounter, it carries a lot of risk. And wait, history shows how quickly accidents can escalate between nuclear powers, right? British officials, they are now warning that Moscow's aerial brinkmanship, it could eventually trigger catastrophic consequences. Yet, Russia appears equally determined to show NATO that it will aggressively defend what it sees as its strategic zone of influence. You know, the bigger picture here that is deeply worrying. Because while the whole world focuses heavily on West Asia, tension between Russia and NATO are quietly remaining extremely dangerous in the backdrop. And now even America's closest West Asian ally may not fully agree with Mr. Trump's Iran strategy. Let's move to the West Asian tensions back. Well, behind the closed doors, reports suggest that Mr. Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, they are increasingly divided over Iran. Now, publicly, both the leaders continue projecting strength. But ladies and gentlemen, according to reports, private conversations have become tense as diplomacy involving Iran, it continues through regional mediators including Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt and Pakistan. Mr. Trump here reportedly still believes that some form of agreement with Tehran, it is possible. However, Mr. Netanyahu, he is said to favor stronger military pressure instead. And you know what? This disagreement, it matters a lot because for years, Israel has viewed Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat. Mr. Netanyahu, he has reportedly argued that Tehran cannot be trusted and that military pressure remains necessary here. In the meantime, Mr. Trump appears to be balancing two goals simultaneously, projecting strength while also trying to avoid another prolonged West Asian war before any major political battles at home. On the other hand, we have Iran. Iran says any future agreement must include sanction relief and access to frozen Iranian fund. Tehran here believes it has survived years of pressure and therefore deserves concession before making any promises or compromises. And you know, this creates a very dangerous triangle of mistrust. Here, Israel fears diplomacy may give Iran some more time. Iran fears negotiations are simply pressure tactics. In the meantime, America is trying to manage both the allies and adversaries simultaneously. And the result? growing instability. While diplomatic tensions grow very openly, Washington is now launching another aggressive move, and this move is directly targeting Iran's financial network. The United States is now offering up to $15 million for information targeting the financial network of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the powerful IRGC. This is not about intelligence gathering at all. This is economic warfare. How? Let me explain. Here, Washington claims that the IRGC uses shell companies, cryptocurrency channels, and covert financial systems just to fund operations across West Asia. American officials are now encouraging informants to submit intelligence through encrypted platforms like Signal with promises of financial reward and even relocation assistance. Wait for a moment. Think about what this reveals. Well, the US believes Iran's financial influence stretches far beyond traditional banking system. Modern sanction battles, they are now happening through crypto network, hidden ownership structure, and shadow financing operations spread globally. And you know what? This particular strategy, it shows how modern conflict has really changed. Wars today are no longer fought only with missiles or tanks. They are also fought through sanctions, through cyber operations, financial surveillance, and information warfare. And yes, at the very same time, the FBI continues pursuing cases involving alleged Iranian espionage network, including former intelligence specialist Monica Witt, who was accused of defecting to Iran years ago. So, for Washington, this is not about one military standoff. It cannot be. It is about dismantling Iran's broader intelligence network, and that too worldwide. But as America increases pressure on Tehran, China and Russia are very quietly becoming more involved behind the scenes. And their latest discussions, they are raising major questions, and this time, globally. Just days after Mr. Donald Trump's visit, Chinese President Mr. Xi Jinping and Russian President Mr. Vladimir Putin reportedly discussed the growing West Asian crisis in Beijing. And now, analysts are asking one major question. Are China and Russia quietly coordinating their Iran strategy together? Now, publicly, Mr. Xi, he called for stability and an end to regional hostilities. But let's be honest, behind the scenes, many observers believe that Beijing and Moscow, they are carefully positioning themselves for the world where America becomes increasingly trapped in West Asian tension. In the meantime, China has massive economic interests tied to the Gulf oil supplies. Russia benefits strategically when Western alliances become distracted or divided. In fact, Iran itself maintains strong ties with both the powers. So that means every West Asian escalation, it now automatically becomes part of a much larger global competition involving the United States, China, and Russia. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where geopolitics becomes extremely complicated. China publicly talks about peace and mediation. In the meantime, Russia criticizes the Western military pressure. America warns Iran very aggressively. But Israel? Well, that country is preparing for worst-case scenario. In the meantime, oil prices react instantly to every single headline. And this is why the Iran crisis is no longer just regional. It is becoming part of a broader global power struggle shaping the 21st century. And now the Gulf itself, it is warning that Iran-backed groups may already be expanding attacks deeper into the region. In the latest news, the United Arab Emirates has officially and publicly accused Iran-backed militia in Iraq of involvement in the alleged attack that was linked to Barak nuclear power plant. Wait, that accusation, that's serious, because attacks involving nuclear infrastructure, it immediately raised fear of catastrophic escalation. Senior UAE official Anwar Gargash, he reportedly described the whole incident as dangerous indicator of the growing threat posed by Iran-aligned regional actors. In fact, he also compared the whole situation to piracy in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most strategically important energy route. And the UAE says that this threat, it is no longer only regional. It could impact the entire global economy. Why? Because the Gulf remains central to the world's energy supply. Any major disruption over here involving shipping lanes, oil infrastructure, or regional security, it instantly affects the fuel price and global markets, and that too worldwide. The UAE also revealed that its air defense systems intercepted 6 hostile drones, and that too within 48 hours. And let's be honest, that tells you how tense the whole environment has become. Drone warfare is now transforming the whole West Asian battlefield completely. Cheap unmanned system, it can threaten critical infrastructure, overwhelm the defenses, and create constant psychological pressure. And here the fear is growing that if one major Gulf nation gets pulled deeper into direct confrontation, the regional crisis could expand dramatically. And wait, while the whole West Asia burns with tension, another global diplomatic storm is now erupting in Asia over Israel and Gaza. South Korea is reportedly making headlines after reports that their president, Lee Jae-myung, he warned Israeli Prime Minister Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu he could face arrest if he enters South Korean territory. Why? Because tensions are exploding following Israel's interception of Gaza-bound aid flotilla, including international activists and humanitarian groups. This controversy, it is reigniting debates over international law, war crimes, allegations, and the role of the International Criminal Court. Wait, what makes this whole moment significant is that criticism of Israel is now emerging from increasingly diverse parts of the world. Not only from any traditional rivals or anybody from the West Asian territory. South Korea's strong rhetoric is now attracting attention because Seoul is normally viewed as a close US ally focused heavily on East Asian security issues. Yet, now even Asian democracies, they are being pulled into diplomatic consequences of the Gaza conflict. But here, wait, Israel argues that its naval operations are very important for security. Critics argue that humanitarian access is being obstructed. The global divide over Gaza, it continues deepening emotionally and politically. And as global conflicts multiply, another strange geopolitical narrative is suddenly going viral online involving Mr. Donald Trump and Cuba. The United States has now sent one of its most powerful aircraft carriers into the Caribbean Sea. And suddenly fears of a new geopolitical confrontation involving Cuba are rising rapidly. We are talking about USS Nimitz, one of America's most famous nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. It has officially entered the Caribbean alone, and that too with a massive strike group. This is not a symbolic development. It cannot be. This is serious military firepower, moving closer to Cuba at a time when Mr. Donald Trump is dramatically escalating rhetoric against Havana. The strike group includes advanced FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jets, electronic warfare aircraft, destroyers, military support vessels capable of sustaining major operations, and that too for the extended period. Together, they represent floating military power, and that too on a massive scale. And now, ladies and gentlemen, analysts are asking one major question. Why deploy so much powerful naval force in the Caribbean right now? Because, let's be honest, the timing, that is impossible to ignore. Mr. Trump has intensified his attack on Cuba after the United States Department of Justice formally charged the former Cuban president, Raul Castro, over 1996 drowning of civilian aircraft that killed 4. The announcement came on Cuba's International Day, adding even more political symbolism to an already explosive situation. Here, Mr. Trump said, Cuba is now on our mind. And wait, those words are sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles. Well, for many Cuban Americans in Florida, Mr. Trump's aggressive posture, it is politically popular. But for others, the fear is that tension between Washington and Havana, it could spiral into something far more dangerous. And yes, at the very same time, Secretary of State Mr. Marco Rubio, himself a Cuban American, he issued a very strong message supporting pressure tactics against Cuba's communist government. In fact, reports also suggest that CIA Director John, he recently met Cuban official and warned that America's window for talks may not stay open forever. And that sentence, it really matters because in geopolitical language, warnings about limited windows often signal rising pressure behind the closed doors. And now the arrival of USS Nimitz, it is amplifying those fears even more. The carrier itself, it has decades of combat history operating from the Taiwan Strait to the Persian Gulf. In fact, just weeks ago, it conducted joint exercise with Brazil's navy near Rio de Janeiro. Now suddenly, it is sitting much closer to Cuba. Now for Havana, this development, it may look deeply threatening for them. Well, for Washington, it may be a show of force, well, typically designed to pressure the Cuban government politically and psychologically. But globally, the concern is much larger because the Caribbean has historically been one of the most sensitive strategic regions in the US history. Well, the memory of Cuban Missile Crisis, it still shapes how the world views military tension involving Cuba. Any major escalation there, it immediately attracts the international attention because history has shown how quickly Caribbean confrontation can become a global crisis. And tonight, with American warships moving into position, Mr. Trump escalating rhetoric and tension rising across multiple global hotspots. All at once, the world is again watching Cuba very closely. Well, tonight's headlines may feel disconnected at first. Well, let's count them. American warplanes near Israel. Iran warning about hidden missiles. Russian jets confronting NATO aircraft. Russia and China discussing the West Asian crisis. The Gulf fearing wider escalation. And global diplomatic tension spreading from Gaza to Cuba. But together, these stories reveal one uncomfortable truth. The world is definitely entering a far more unstable era. Well, military buildups are escalating. In the meantime, alliances are shifting, economic pressure are growing, and superpowers are testing each other more openly than they have in years. The biggest fear tonight is not only war itself, it is miscalculation. One wrong move, one wrong missile, one pilot flying too close, one attack misunderstood, and one diplomatic collapse. Suddenly, a regional crisis can become far bigger. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Driti Atri. This is Skyline. See you tomorrow.